This is Margaret Olds welcoming you to our show. We are sponsored by RSVP, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, a part of Mature Services. A kaleidoscope, according to the dictionary, offers a constantly changing group of bright objects. This is what we hope to achieve with these programs, highlighting interesting organizations, activities, and people in our viewing area. After these messages, we'll be right back to meet our guest.
RSVP of Summit County has been making a difference in our community since 1972. RSVP volunteers are increasing the quality of life by participating in programs and organizations that provide important services to the community. RSVP matches personal interests and skills with opportunities to serve. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.
Our guest today is Allison First, who is Education Coordinator for the Summit County Historical Society. Today she brings us something from their programs called Remember When. We call her the Trunk Lady because she has many programs in many trunks of things that we all will remember. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about the Remembering When program you're going to talk about today.
Well, we have 10 programs that that are part of the Remember When series. The program that I'm going to be talking about today is one called On the Home Front, The Many Hats of World War II. And what we do with this program is we focus on what people were doing on the home front. We talk very briefly at the very beginning of the program about those who have served in the military during World War II, whether you had relatives that were in the military. And to begin the program, what we do is we hold up hats and show the hats of those who had served and ask those people who were in the military or had someone who was in the military to raise their hand. And in doing so, then we thank them for their service, and then we'll sing the song pertaining to that branch of the military, whether it be the Marine Corps hymn with the Marines or the Navy or the Army Air Corps. That's what we do at the very beginning. From that point forward, then, we focus on what people were doing on the home front, whether they're a child of very small age or whether they're 99 years old. Everyone had a role on the home front, from Victory Gardens to ration books to Rosie the Riveters.
That must be a lot of fun to watch. Tell us a little bit about some of the hats here.
I would love to tell you them. At the Historical Society, we have a collection of uniforms that date back to the Civil War. And we kind of look at it this way, is that what purpose does it serve to have it stored away and not share what we have? So these Remember When programs give us that opportunity to share what we have within our collection. We have a representation of many of the services. We have the Army, which was our foot soldier. We also have the Marines with this hat, the Army Air Corps, the Navy, and during World War II, of course, is when they started having the auxiliary military for the ladies. And we do have, the only hat that we have is from the Waves, and this is a summer hat from World War II for the Waves. And the Waves. What was interesting about the military and the women is when they opened up the branch of service for the ladies, over 300,000 ladies then joined the military service during World War II.
That's quite a large number.
That is quite a large number. And they, what they did also is they would encourage women to join the military, and by doing so, by joining the military, then it freed up those other jobs that generally would have been done by a gentleman, and then they would send them overseas, and then the women would do that particular job.
Well, you have quite a selection of things here. What are some of these items that you have from your trunk?
Well, I brought a variety of different things that we share within the program. Again, we focus on what people were doing on the home front. We talk about various roles that people had, things that they could do on the home front in order to help that we could supply the necessary things that are going to be needed overseas. I've brought today a couple of things that that we talk about. One of the major things we talk about, of course, is the women's role during World War II. With all of these men signing up to go overseas or to even be on the home front doing things military in the home front, jobs opened up for women, and they joined the workforce, and it's really when they began to wear slacks. So we focus on the jobs that women did. They made rafts, they worked in building tires, they drove trucks, they operated cranes. And so what I've brought, here's a wonderful photo that was taken in 1942 of two women who were working at the Goodyear aircraft, Martina Bonner and Marjorie Parker, and they are considered to be Rosie the Riveters. And so we talk about the various things that women did on the home front job-wise, and also how they, in order to work, often what the women would do is they slept in shifts too, so that a woman who would work one shift, she would come and watch the children of another couple, and so that they could go off to work too. When we talk about the things that they did on the home front and what interesting roles that the women played on the home front during World War II. One of the hats that we don't have showing up here, though, and I apologize I didn't show this sooner, is the paratrooper hat. That's another branch of the military that we have as far as clothing-wise. One of the things we like to talk about is what was rationed during the World War II. One of the many things women like to talk about, of course, is the stockings. Stockings could not be had. They needed the nylons to make the rafts or to make the parachutes. And so nylons was one of the things. Women used to then not be able to get nylons, and what did they do? What did they do when they needed to have some stockings? A lot of times you would use paint, and they would paint their legs, then they would take that eyebrow marker and then they would draw the line up the back of their leg to make it look like there was a seam. Another thing that was really interesting about rationing is before World War II, when a gentleman bought a suit, what he would, when he purchased the suit, it would have a jacket, it would have a vest, and it would have 2 pairs of slacks with the cuff around it. After World War II started, when a gentleman, if he could purchase a suit, they didn't supply the vest, and they only had 1 pair of slacks that went with it. So and they didn't have the cuff, because they needed the fabric in order to produce things for the men who were fighting overseas. Another thing, of course, coffee was rationed. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but they called coffee Roosevelt's coffee. And the reason they called it Roosevelt's coffee was because they would use the grounds over and over and over again. So by the time that they had finished using the grounds to throw the grounds away, it was almost like they were drinking mud. So they rationed all kinds of things like that. Then they would put out propaganda, and they would have them on billboards, or they would have them in magazines. Here's a piece called "Millions of Troops Are on the Move. Is your trip necessary?" And of course, that was when they rationed the gasoline. Mm-hmm. And most people, your average family, each person would get 3 to 4 gallons of gas that they could use a week, was about all. But the ration books that they had, each member of the family then had their own ration book that they would use. I was not aware of that until I started to do the research. But so if you are a child of 3, or if you are 95 years old, you had your own ration coupon book, which made it a little bit easier if you're trying to supply different things like butter. We started using oleo instead of butter. Sugar, of course, was hard to get by. Shoes were also hard to come by, and what people did is that they would, when they would have their shoes worn out, then what they would do is they would put cardboard in the bottom of the shoe, because of course they needed the leather and the rubber that was being used for the war effort. So these are some of the things that they were doing on the home front. In order to keep people doing what they needed to do on the home front, people were very patriotic. And so in order to help them with that, is you could put this in your window. It was called, this is a victory home. And it was encourage people to do the right thing, to ration, to recycle. They recycled everything from cans, and there were places that you could go to recycle these things, and encouraged people to do that. Another thing they encouraged you is, if you've heard of spreading the rumors, the loose lips, what? They sink ships. So please don't spread rumors. And so you would put this in your home saying this is a V home. And on the back it says, this home follows the instructions of its air raid wardens in order to protect against air attack. That was one way that you could do that. You refused to spread those rumors. And of course we bought war bonds and stamps. And I think we were talking earlier about buying those stamps. And you could buy them at the theaters. Did you go to the theaters? And did you buy them?
We bought them mainly at school. I remember our homeroom teacher would make a big deal out of war stamp days, and we would buy our stamps, and then we would sing "Your Grand Old Flag," the whole class would, and we would troop up and buy them and stick them in our little books. So that's mainly where I, as a child, did that. But I know that my parents would go to the theater and buy them at different places, and at work also. They sold them.
They really encouraged everyone to do their part. And I think that's what's so fascinating. They talk about this generation, the greatest generation, the Tom Brokaw book. And I read it, and I was absolutely fascinated by this great generation who had a rendezvous with destiny. And they taught us so much, the next generation, and we can learn so much from them. But they did. They knew that they had a job to do, and they did it, whether it be rationing the different things or buying the stamps. The theaters, if you would go to the theater, what was great about going to the theater back at that particular time is it wouldn't cost you very much to go to a movie theater. And you would go and they would show a movie at the beginning about like a patriotic thing that would say, this is what our troops are doing, help support our troops. And then they would encourage you at the end of the show then to go back to the theater and buy your stamps. You could purchase them at the theater, and then they would show you your regular movie theater, whatever was being shown at that particular time.
And they also showed the newsreel. The newsreels. We always saw news of the day at the movies. Every time. Yeah. That was something I remember very much. Yeah,
and you could go to a movie for 10, 15 cents, and you not only saw the feature film, they had other things that you could do. And you could buy popcorn. Today, you have to refinance the house to go to a movie if you're going to go see a movie. So this was a way that people on the home front could help what was going on overseas. And everything that they did was so critical to the war effort in order to get this war over with so that we could bring the loved ones home. And everybody was doing their part. One of the other things that they did too, which I thought was very fascinating, and the government helped us with this. And they provided people calendars for your victory gardens. And so whether you lived on the West Coast or if you lived in Missouri or if you're on the East Coast, they gave you a calendar. You could get a calendar that told you what to plant and when to plant it. And you could get these, and then what the people did is not only did they plant their victory gardens, they shared. They shared what they grew, and they shared it with neighbors, they shared it with their family, and people came together as a nation. If they needed to go shopping, one of the things that they did is, obviously gasoline was hard to come by. So what did the people do? They walked. They took public transportation. Of course, we had public transportation that was available to us, which really, really made it nice. Or they carpooled. You would say to your neighbor, I have to run into town. And in doing so, you want to come with me? And so they carpooled, and people came together knowing what they needed to do. If your child outgrew something, well, you didn't just throw it away. Maybe your neighbor could have used it, and so you shared your clothing, and you shared, and you came together as a whole nation in order to help get things to the front line, so that the men and the women who are overseas, they had what was available to help get this war over with, and people were coming together in order to do that.
Another thing I remember about canning became so important.
Yes,
You grew the garden and then you canned the food. so that you would have the supplies through the winter. And I also remember saving bacon grease, and they would have collection centers where you would strain the bacon grease and take it in. I don't know what they ever did with it, but apparently it had something important to do with the war effort.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
That's I always learn something when I talk to people. Different things that they did. That's how I learned about the coffee. You know, and
I
making
had never
coffee.
heard that about the coffee.
It was called Roosevelt's coffee.
Yeah, that was new to me.
Oh.
So people were really very highly involved. I see you have some M&Ms there. Tell me about the M&Ms.
The M&Ms. Interesting things come out. As far as invention comes out because of war. Silly putty came out during World War II. It was an experiment that went bad. Benadryl was another invention that came out during World War II for help with the allergies. Of course, penicillin came out at that particular time. M&Ms is another invention that came out at that particular time. And from the stories that I read about M&Ms is that they had regular chocolate. Of course, it wasn't coated, and of course, looking at chocolate, it almost melts. So you have your men who are overseas and they have some chocolate, and it's going to melt in their hands, and it's going to make everything very sticky. Well, was it Mars? Is that who made this? M&M's Mars developed this M&M in order with this that had a coating on it, and they developed it during World War II so that they would have little pieces of candy that wouldn't melt so quickly in their hands. One of the inventions that came out during World War II. The Sikorsky, who invented the helicopter, the first military helicopter, came about during World War II. Same with the Jeep. So inventions came about during World War II, and that's why I brought the M&Ms. And the Slinky was another invention that went wrong. I have no idea what they were trying to invent at that particular time, but it's just kind of fun talking about those various things that were invented during World War II or came about at that particular time. So we talk a little bit in this program about invention. We talk about the music that came out, of course, with the wonderful band sound. You don't get any better music, or even the movies that came out at that time period. They came out with many of the Casablanca, of course, is one of my favorite movies in the whole wide world. Oh, let's see, who was that? In Casablanca, I can't think of it. Humphrey Bogart, that's right.
Ingrid Bergman.
And yes, Ingrid Bergman. Wonderful, wonderful movie that came out at that time. And we had a lot of movies that came out at that time period too, that dealt with the war that was going on.
Oh, I was always going to be a nurse because we'd always see these war films about nurses and action and everything, and I thought, oh, that was so wonderful.
Very romantic.
I don't know, it didn't look romantic, it looked like hard work, but it was something that really attracted my attention as a young person. I never did become a nurse, but that was just another way that this whole society became involved with the war effort, and Hollywood played a big effort in that, with movie stars going around and selling, helping to sell war bonds and so forth. Tell me about the coin purse.
Actually, this is relatively new. One of our wonderful volunteers brought this into me the other day, and I'd never seen anything like that before. And in this coin purse was part of their ration tokens. And I was trying to find information about this. The ration tokens that we have there's a red and a blue one, and they came about. The tokens came about in 1944. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
And what it was used for, it was used to give change from the ration coupon, and I was not aware of it. So I don't know, I still have to do some research on that. So I don't know what the difference as far as in the color was, and maybe somebody along the line will come help me out with that when I do a program. But this was just donated to us very recently, and it's just one more thing that we'd love to add. We always are updating the information that we put in all of our Remember When trunks. partly because of what we hear when we go out to visit people. And you learn so much. It's lifelong learning is really what these programs are all about. So it's kind of fun. Another thing that we can add to this wonderful trunk. Another thing that we do with the program, and we talk about the various songs that came out during World War II with the big bands, the Glenn Miller and the Tommy Dorseys, the little brown jug. Is that what that was? I can't think.
The Andrews Sisters.
Yes, and the pinup girls. Of course, you have to talk about the pinup girls. All of the actresses wanted to be a pinup girl, and so they would pose in various things, and the men would have them in their footlockers overseas.
Do you have those in your trunk?
You know, actually, I do have them in the trunk. I didn't bring it with me, but yes, we do have many pictures of the ladies who were the pinup girls at that particular time too.
And this is just one trunk. How many trunks do you have?
We have 10 trunks right now that we have available that we go out and take. And they're called the Remember When series. And each of them has a different theme. And we began this program, if you don't mind me talking about this, but we began this program about 6 years ago. And our very first program was a program on paper dolls. And we had a lovely volunteer, Betty Rowlands, and she had the most marvelous paper doll collection that dated back into the late 1890s. And she would tell the story of the history of the paper doll. And it was really very fascinating. And we thought we needed to get this out. And so we contacted the Margaret Clark Morgan Foundation. And on a snowy January day, Margaret Clark and several of her board members came to the Historical Society, and Betty Rowlands then did the paper doll program for them, and they fell in love with her. You couldn't help but fall in love with Betty. She was just marvelous. She's a wonderful, wonderful storyteller. And so since then, they have been very generous to us in helping us develop and research new programs. And so it started off with paper dolls, and we continue to develop new programs. Our most recent program is called Lots of Locks, A Canal Story. It's a PowerPoint program, and they help fund that. Another one they just recently helped fund was on invention. I love invention. When we talk about invention, I'm not talking about the airplane. I'm talking about who invented the square-bottom paper bag, who invented the coat hanger, who invented earmuffs, everyday items that we have. And it's a fun story. And what we do with these trunks, we bring out trunks or suitcases jam-packed with things. Like this one is, of course, on World War II, on the home front of World War II. We set these things out on a table and we tell a story, and then we encourage people to also do the same. Tell us their stories, like what you were sharing with me today. And we always learn something new. And generally what happens is after the program is over is when we hear the best stories, with people sharing stories.
I see you have a program coming up on the Civil War. Would you like to talk about
I'd love to talk about this. I'm very, very excited about this. This year marks the 150th anniversary of the beginning of the Civil War. Things are going to be happening all over the country pertaining to this anniversary. One of the things that the Summit County Historical Society is doing is we're partnering with the national parks. And we have invited a gentleman by the name of Bobby Horton to come, and he lives in Alabama. And Bobby Horton has worked with Ken Burns on many of Ken Burns's PBS programs, including the Civil War program that he did and the National Parks program. He does a lot of the music for it. So we have invited Bobby Horton to come to the Summit County Historical Society. He will be coming to the Historical Society on January the 25th. We're going to set him up on the mansion front porch. We're going to have reenactors from both the north and the south, and they're coming. They're going to set up encampments, and Bobby Horton is going to play the Civil War music and tell the history of the Civil War through music. He's a marvelous, marvelous musician. He is then, the night before, he'll be at Happy Days Lodge on Route 303, and he will be doing that same program at the Happy Days Lodge through the Lyceum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, you certainly have a lot of exciting things to talk about, and we're delighted that you came to speak with us today about this. And I'm sure you'll get a lot of calls at the Summit County Historical Society of people who would like to see one of your programs. And we hope that perhaps you'll come back again sometime.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
And thank you for watching today's view through our kaleidoscope. We hope you enjoyed it and that you will remember our sponsor, RSVP, part of Mature Services. RSVP offers adults age 55 and over volunteer opportunities in the local community. For more information about RSVP, call the number on the screen. This is Margaret Olds saying goodbye for now.
Since 1971, RSVP has been matching volunteers' talents to community needs. RSVP is affiliated with the Corporation for National and Community Service, a national organization that supports service and volunteering through grant-funded projects. Volunteers organize neighborhood watch programs, tutor children, renovate homes, plant community gardens, assist victims of natural disasters, and serve their communities in many other ways. RSVP offers maximum flexibility and choice to its volunteers as it matches the personal interests and skills of Americans 55 and older with opportunities to serve their communities. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.
Distribution of this program has been made possible through the generous support of the Kaler Law Firm. At the Kaler Law Firm, attorney Jim Kaler helps seniors and veterans who need long-term care keep some of their life savings in the family. For more information, visit www.protectingseniors.com. The mission of the Kaler Law Firm is protecting a senior's life savings.